The first time my mother-in-law said it, it sounded like a joke. We were standing in the kitchen, the late afternoon sun slanting through the blinds, making thin golden stripes across the countertop. She had just walked in without knocking, like she always did, tapping her nails against the doorframe as if the house itself belonged to her rhythm. She glanced around, taking in the space the way a landlord inspects a property, then smiled at me like she was doing me a favor. "This house is mine now," she said, and then she laughed. Not because it was funny, but because she expected me to accept it. I remember holding a dish towel in my hands, frozen in the middle of wiping a clean plate. My mouth almost formed a polite smile out of habit, out of training, out of years of trying to be the good daughter-in-law who never causes tension. But inside me, something went still, because she wasn't joking. Not really. My mother-in-law didn't come to visit. She came to claim. She came to take up space. She came to remind me, quietly, consistently, that in her mind, I was temporary, and she was permanent. And the worst part? My husband stood right beside her and didn't correct her. He didn't even flinch. That's when I realized something painful. The war wasn't going to come with shouting. It was going to come with silence. My name is Zara Collins. I'm 39 years old. I work full-time as a medical billing specialist in Sacramento, California. I'm not glamorous, not rich, not loud. I'm the kind of woman who keeps things running. Bills paid, groceries stocked, laundry folded, schedules managed. I used to think that was love, being useful. My husband, Ethan, is 42. He works in IT. Smart, calm, conflict avoidant. The kind of man who thinks peace means avoiding difficult conversations, even when avoidance hurts someone else, even when avoidance turns into betrayal. We've been married 12 years, and for the first 8 years, I genuinely believed I got lucky. Ethan wasn't a drinker, wasn't aggressive, wasn't a womanizer. He wasn't like the husbands in those sad stories people whisper about over coffee. But he had one issue, a heavy one. His mother, Linda. Linda Collins was the kind of woman who wore her motherhood like a crown. The kind who believed she didn't raise a son. She raised a possession, the kind who saw her son's marriage not as a new family forming, but as a theft. From the beginning, I tried. I really tried. I called her mom. I bought her gifts. I asked her opinion on curtains and paint colors. I invited her to holidays even when she criticized my cooking in front of everyone. I stayed quiet when she made those little comments that cut without leaving evidence. Comments like, "You're lucky Ethan chose you," or, "My son needs someone softer," or, "When Ethan was little, he didn't like his food spicy. He still doesn't. Don't force him to eat like that." She said it like she knew him better than I ever could. She said it like I was a babysitter who overstayed. The early years were manageable because we didn't live close. Linda lived in a small town about an hour away. She visited sometimes, but not constantly. Then my father died. Everything changed after that. My dad was my anchor, quiet, strong, the kind of man who didn't say much but made you feel safe just by being near. When cancer took him, it didn't just take a person. It took the emotional structure of my life. I inherited a house, not a mansion, not a modern dream home, just a simple 2-story place in a decent Sacramento neighborhood. Hardwood floors, a small backyard, a porch that creaked when you stepped on it, but it was stable, solid. It was the kind of house my father worked his whole life to own outright. He left it to me because I was his only child, and I remember him telling me once, long before he got sick, "Zara, no matter what happens, always make sure you have a roof no one can take from you." At the time, I thought he meant life in general. Now I understand he meant family, too. When Ethan and I moved in, I was grieving, vulnerable, soft. And Linda saw that softness like an open door. At first, she offered help. "I can come by and organize the kitchen. I can help you decorate. This place looks a little dated. I'll keep a spare key, just in case." At first, I felt grateful. Then I started to feel invaded. Because the help wasn't help. It was control wearing a smile. One day I came home from work and found Linda in my living room moving furniture. Not adjusting pillows, moving actual furniture. "Linda," I said, my voice careful, "what are you doing?" She didn't even pause. "Oh, honey, the couch was placed wrong. The energy in here felt off." Energy. She used words like that when she wanted to sound wise instead of intrusive. I looked at Ethan. He was standing there holding a box, like a child caught between two parents. "It's fine," he murmured. "She's just trying to make it nicer." That was the first time I felt the boundary of my marriage bend. Not break, bend. Then came the weekends. Linda started showing up every Saturday morning, sometimes Sunday too. Sometimes she'd stay overnight, turning our guest room into her personal space. She rearranged cabinets, bought different curtains, critiqued my grocery choices, and she started talking about the house like it was hers. This house needs better upkeep. This backyard should be redesigned. I'm thinking of putting a small fountain near the porch. I finally said, gently, Linda, I'd like to be included before changes are made. She looked at me like I'd made a childish request. Of course, sweetheart, she said. But you know how these things are. Someone has to lead. Someone. Not me. Not the woman whose father's name was still etched into the foundation. Then the words came. This house is mine now. I didn't respond that day. I just stood there holding the towel while she laughed and Ethan stayed silent. But later that night I asked him, why didn't you say anything? Ethan was in bed, scrolling on his phone like the world wasn't collapsing. He shrugged. She didn't mean it literally. Then why say it? She's older, Zara. She says weird stuff. Just ignore it. Ignore it. That sentence did something inside me, because it told me exactly where I ranked. Not above his mother. Not even equal. Just expected to tolerate. I turned my face away so he wouldn't see my eyes fill. He reached out and patted my shoulder like I was a coworker having a bad day. I don't want fights, he murmured. That's when I realized he wasn't protecting peace. He was protecting himself. The real wound came 2 weeks later. We were hosting a small dinner. Linda invited herself, of course, and also invited Ethan's cousin Rachel and Rachel's husband. I didn't mind company, but I hated the way Linda acted like she was the hostess. She stood in my kitchen, directing me like hired help. No, Zara, use the bigger plate. Don't overcook the chicken. Put the salad in a glass bowl. It looks classier. I obeyed because I didn't want tension. Then, halfway through dinner, Rachel complimented the house. It's beautiful, she said, looking around. You guys are lucky. Linda smiled. Sweet, proud, poisonous. Oh, it's been in our family for a while, she said. I froze. My fork paused midair. Rachel's eyes widened. Oh, wow, really? I didn't know. Linda nodded. Yes, Ethan will inherit it anyway, so it's basically his. She said it so smoothly, like she was stating a fact. I looked at Ethan, and this time, he didn't even look uncomfortable. He just kept eating, letting the lies settle on the table like a centerpiece. My face burned, not from anger, from humiliation, because everyone believed her, because my silence helped her. I excused myself to the bathroom, and that's where I broke. Not loudly, just quietly, in front of my own reflection, staring at the woman I had become. Polite, controlled, shrinking inside her own walls. 12 years of marriage, and I was still being treated like an outsider in my father's home. I gripped the sink hard enough to hurt, and in that pain, something changed. I didn't cry longer than a minute, because I wasn't grieving anymore. I was waking up. I walked back to the table, sat down, and listened to Linda continue talking about family property and legacy, and how important it is that Ethan has stability. I smiled, not because I agreed, because I was done reacting emotionally to someone who thrived on it. That night, after everyone left, I waited until Ethan got comfortable on the couch, like he always did after social gatherings, like a man who believed the hardest part of life was being tired. I sat across from him, quiet, steady. Ethan, I said softly, did you hear what your mother said tonight? He sighed like I was annoying him. About the house? Zara, don't start. I'm not starting, I said. I'm asking. He leaned back, rubbing his eyes. She just talks. She's proud. She thinks... she thinks what? I pressed. He didn't answer, so I answered for him. She thinks the house belongs to you. His silence was the loudest thing in the room. I nodded slowly, tasting bitterness in my throat. Did you ever correct her? When she told people the house was in your family? He finally looked at me then. His eyes weren't angry. They were tired. He wanted me to stop. I don't want drama, he said again. And that's when I realized the truth. The real betrayal wasn't Linda. It was Ethan choosing comfort over my dignity. I stood up. I'm going to bed, I said. In the bedroom, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, hearing my father's voice in my memory. A roof no one can take from you. I got up quietly at 5:30 a.m., made coffee, and opened the file cabinet in my office. I pulled out the house documents, the deed, the property tax records, the will copy. Everything was in my name, only my name. Zara Hart Collins. Linda couldn't take it. Ethan couldn't take it. But they could try. And something deep inside me whispered, they will. So I started planning. Not loud revenge, just preparation. I called an attorney that morning. Not for divorce, not yet. For protection. I explained the situation, the constant invasion, the emotional manipulation, the public claim of ownership. The attorney, a calm older woman named Patricia, listened carefully. Then she asked one question. Is your husband listed anywhere on the deed? No, I said. Good, she replied. Then your mother-in-law can't legally claim anything. But I want you to understand something, Zara. Entitlement becomes dangerous when it's supported by family silence. I closed my eyes, because that sentence felt like it was written about my life. Patricia helped me put safeguards in place, legal boundaries, written documentation, a trust file option, a documented statement of property ownership. And then she said something that made my stomach flip. If you're worried about access, she said, change your locks. Today, change the locks. For my own husband, the thought felt dramatic, until it didn't. Because while I was sitting there feeling guilty about a basic boundary, Linda had already been walking into my home like she owned it. I went straight to a locksmith. That evening, Ethan came home and found his key didn't work. He knocked, confused. I opened the door slowly. He blinked. Why is the lock changed? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't look angry. I looked calm. Because your mother has a key, I said, and I'm done having my space invaded. His mouth opened slightly. You can't just do that without telling me. I just did, I said quietly. The silence between us thickened. He stepped inside, eyes scanning the house like it had changed shape. He looked at me with disbelief. You're making this a bigger deal than it is. No, I replied. You made it a bigger deal when you let her call my father's house yours in front of everyone. He stiffened. It's not like that. How is it then? I asked softly. Ethan swallowed, but he didn't answer. That night, he slept facing away from me, and for the first time in years, I didn't reach for him. Over the next week, Linda showed up unannounced, but she couldn't get in. I watched from the upstairs window as she stood on the porch, tapping the doorbell repeatedly, then banging like she was locked out of a place she owned. When I finally opened the door, her smile was sharp. What is this? She snapped. I kept my expression calm. This is a locked door, I said. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You changed the locks. Without telling me. Yes. Her eyes narrowed. I'm his mother. I nodded. And I'm the homeowner. She looked stunned, like she'd never heard those words aimed at her. She leaned in, whispering venom. You don't get to control everything, Zara. I smiled slightly, almost sadly. I'm not controlling everything, I said. I'm controlling my home. Something you worried was never yours. Linda's face twisted. Then she did what she always did when she words when yours. She watching Ethan. That evening, Ethan confronted me. You embarrassed her, he said. I stared at him. Did she feel embarrassed? I asked. When she embarrassed me, in front of the family? He hesitated. I already knew the answer. He said, She's from a different you're doing. I whispered, and I'm from the generation that's done being quiet. 2 days later, Linda showed up with someone, a man in a suit, a real estate consultant. They watched him into my yard like a tour. I stood on the porch watching them, Linda watching at my porch railings. Such about replacing. The mother-sons taking notes. I stepped forward. Can I help you? Linda, she'd won. Veer's doing your west. Dotto's, Ethan and our decades this place being updates. I blinked slowly. Ethan? Vic said inside. He confronted, looking uncomfortable. Linda facing for him. We're improving the words by Yid, Jew? And your eyes being the body? Rec knows a guy. I'm napping. Your sons. That calmness scared even me. Okay, I said softly. Linda's gleamed. She thought that I from it mean, but what's your two over the doors with words, lowering to the controlling. Because you copies, I said politely. I need you to see who legally those home. The man opened it, read the quick page. His expression changed instantly. He looking at Linda, then exposure. Such watching, he said carefully. Such asking, your name to watching any your contracts. Linda stood jaw and skimmed it, eyes digging with those, panic growing. Then he'd betrayed there. The name next here. Mom, it's watching, with words. It was your God's house. Linda's voice rose such, married the you. I sitting getting facing. Marriage doesn't transfer ownership, I said. Not in this case. Linda stared at me like she had never such me, that you quick plan this, she whispered. I didn't deny it. I protected myself, I corrected. The concisioning backed away politely, while excuse myself. When the last, Linda coming toward me with raw rage. You think paperwork makes you powerful? She said. I replied softly, no. Boundaries do. She turned to Ethan. Are you going to let her talk to me like this? Ethan's face was pale, torn, weak. And that's when the final shift happened. Because for the first time, I didn't wait for him to choose me. I chose myself. I looked at Ethan and said, calm as a still lake. If you want to live under your mother's control, you can go live with her. Linda gasped like I slapped her. Ethan whispered, Zara, don't. I nodded, eyes steady. Then stand up. The silence that followed felt like an earthquake held in the air. Ethan looked at Linda, then at me, and for the first time in 12 years, he did something I never thought I'd see. He exhaled and said, Mom, you need to stop. Linda's mouth opened. He continued, voice shaking but firm. This is Zara's home. You can't come here acting like you own her life. Or mine. Linda stared at him like he'd stabbed her. I raised you, she whispered. And I'm grateful, Ethan said. But you're not allowed to disrespect my wife. I didn't smile, not yet, because I knew this wasn't about victory. It was about truth. Linda left that day without another word. The next weeks were quiet, not peaceful, just tense, like the house was learning how to breathe again after years of holding its breath. Ethan tried to make things normal. He brought flowers, cooked dinner once, initiated conversations. But something in me stayed cautious, because once you see how easily someone allows you to be disrespected, you don't unsee it. A month later, Linda called Ethan crying. I wasn't in the room, but I heard the tone, the emotional trap, the guilt. I'm sick, she sobbed. My blood pressure, my heart, you're killing me. Ethan looked at me like he wanted permission to return to the old patterns, and I understood then. This was the real battle, not locks, not deeds, emotional control. I walked into the room, took the phone gently from his hand and spoke softly. Linda, I said, if you need medical help, call 911. If you need emotional support, you can talk respectfully. But if you're calling to manipulate, this conversation is over. She went silent. Then she whispered, You turned my son against me. I replied, calm and honest. No, your disrespect did. And I hung up. Ethan stared at me. I didn't apologize. I didn't justify. I simply said, we are not doing this anymore. That night, he didn't argue. He just sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped, eyes watery. I didn't realize, he whispered. I nodded slowly. That's the problem, Ethan. You didn't realize, because it wasn't happening to you. He looked up. I'm sorry. I believed he meant it. But I also knew apologies don't rebuild trust overnight. So I gave him something stronger than punishment. I gave him truth. I love you, I said quietly. But I will not be small to keep your life comfortable. He nodded like the sentence finally reached somewhere deep inside him. Linda didn't disappear completely. She never truly accepted defeat. But she learned something that day. Access is a privilege, not a birthright. Months passed. Holidays came. Linda stayed polite, cold but polite. Ethan stayed firmer, not perfect, but trying. And as for me, I began to feel something I hadn't felt in years. Safe. Not because no one could hurt me, but because I finally stopped protecting people who didn't protect me. One morning, I stood on my porch with coffee, watching the sunrise paint the sky soft pink. The house behind me felt like my father again, like the promise he tried to leave me. Not just wood and walls, but security. I thought about Linda's words. This house is mine now, and I realized how dangerous entitlement becomes when women are expected to be quiet. That was never my job. My job was to live with dignity. And now I did. Sometimes the strongest revenge isn't revenge at all. It's finally deciding you will never be easy to disrespect again.